Disdain in London from the Esmeralda King series of books by Kathryn Louise. Chapter 3. The Second Case. White wine really didn't agree with my body. Come to think of it, neither did rosé, red, spirits, or any other alcohol for that matter. My head was banging with the most horrendous hangover I had ever experienced, and my body was shaking. It felt like venomous poison running through my veins, choking the oxygen to my core, riddling me unable to cope with life's everyday tasks. Thinking, breathing, even moving. I wanted to curl up in a small ball and cry myself to sleep. How would I get through the day? Grab a hold of yourself, Esmeralda. I tried talking some sense into my uncomprehendable self. It all sounded a little melodramatic, but I felt the same every time I drank. Samuel was still fast asleep in bed next to me. God, he was handsome. I almost had to pinch myself some mornings just to make sure that I was living this life with him for real. I could see the sun flickering through the small gap in the blinds that fell across the window, but it still seemed early morning, far too early for me to be awake. I angled my wrist gently so that I could read the display on my watch without waking him, blinking a couple of times and opening my eyes just enough to see the numbers. Ugh, I sighed. 5:03 a.m. Far too early to get up. I twisted slightly, but still under the cover of the sheet. I adjusted my position and closed my eyes, hoping I would fall asleep, but the dry sensation in my mouth was festering away in my consciousness. Quietly, I peeled back the sheets and pointed a toe out. I had to head to the kitchen and make some coffee. There was no way I would be able to drift back off, and I didn't want to wake Samuel either. There was something about this house that was so peaceful in the early hours of the morning. The design of it, with its big floor-to-ceiling glass windows, a greenhouse of sunlight on the odd occasion in England when it actually was sunny. I could see why his mother adored it so much. I tiptoed along the main corridor of the house, the smell of glorious air diffusers wafting into the air, past its multitude of empty bedrooms and across to the main staircase, wearing nothing but a negligee that I had somehow managed to find, drunk, in the closet, and where to bed. It was quite feminine for me, but when I was at Samuel's house, I wanted to appear attractive rather than the t-shirt and shorts or pants I wore in my own apartment. I made it down the winding stairs, carefully trying not to miss a step, and headed for the kitchen. Rubbing my eyes, I lifted the strands of my hair into a messy pile and tied it into a ponytail. Now, should I make myself a nice warm cup of coffee to wake me up, or should I start with a small glass of filtered water that I so desperately needed? Although Samuel's house was an architectural masterpiece with its own history, he had redesigned the kitchen with a modern look and feel. There were no handles. Each cupboard or drawer was a push-open type. The exact point had to be pressed for it to open, and there was no way of being able to slam them shut in an argument because they had softly closed. Everything was integrated from the fridge to the dishwasher, bin, and even the wine cooler, sleek and sophisticated, just like him. I decided to go with both, a water to quench my thirst, then a coffee to sip and enjoy. I took a glass coffee cup from the cupboard and placed it underneath the whirring machine, brewing it to perfection. A few sips of water and I was feeling better already. 9-meter-long glass doors spanned the entire length of the back of the house, where the kitchen looked out onto grass fields for as far as the eye could see. Samuel's estate was in the middle of acres of land surrounded by a world-renowned golf course in the distance. There was nothing better than sitting on the veranda, perched at the top of his landscape gardens to enjoy the view. It gave me headspace, the ability to think and clear my mind, especially the events of the previous night. Sarah and Hugo. I had to find out what was happening there, and quickly, before she got her teeth into Cinco Chicas. God only knows what she was planning. It must have something to do with the business deal that she was trying to talk me into. There was no way she wanted or liked Hugo. She was using him as a pawn. I instantly felt sorry for him. He deserved a nice woman in his life. I also wanted to know what the next case was with Cordelia, but more importantly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to take on another one just yet, even though I had given Samuel the speech the previous day about how independent a woman I was. I was half enjoying the time off. I sat down in the garden armchair, a grey material covered seat and large matching cushions. I crossed my legs, throwing a thin blanket over my lap, and watched the sun gently rise. My mug of morning coffee grasped between both my hands, aiding my body to warm up. It was mornings like this that made me appreciate every inch of my existence. I could smell a combination of the previous night's perfume lingering on my skin and the early morning dew on the damp grass just a short distance from my chair. Very rarely did I get the time to truly appreciate how pretty and magnificent sunrises actually were. It was so early there that it was still a settling mist surrounding the trees in the distance. Birds were beginning to stir and the sky gradually became brighter from the sunlight. The smell of freshly brewed coffee beans as well filtered through from the kitchen. Startled by a noise behind me, I turned around as Samuel appeared, wearing just his pajama trousers and a tired look on his face. "Couldn't sleep?" he said in a husky voice. I think the alcohol had got the better of him. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you," I finished with a yawn. "You didn't. I've been tossing and turning all night and my alarm just went off. I have an early flight to catch." He placed a hand on each of my shoulders and gently squeezed with a cheeky morning grin. "Oh?" I looked up at his morning stubble. It was news to me. He hadn't said anything about an early morning flight. "Yep. Sarah wants me to meet a business associate, a potential for a business acquisition, but he is based in the US. I'm just hoping she is in a better state than she was last night." He didn't wait for my reply. He proceeded to walk back into the kitchen and make himself a coffee too. Sarah. That made sense. She thrived on every opportunity to get her claws into Samuel, and now my club. If he and I ever got married, the award for best sister-in-law would not be going to her. I was talking about marriage in a hypothetical sense, of course. It was not something I'd ever spoken about before. And I mean, if he ever asked me, of course I would say. Samuel interrupted my thoughts. Goodness, I was dangerous when I didn't have a preoccupied mind or wasn't solving cases. Maybe I needed this case after all. It would focus my brain. Who knew what might happen if I didn't? I could end up married to one of the most gorgeous multimillionaires I had ever met. It could be worse. "It's not a problem, is it?" Samuel called out over the sound of the coffee machine. "Of course not. I have things to do anyway," I replied nonchalantly. "I'll be back the day after tomorrow. It's a quick in, quick out visit. The flight is already booked. Sarah's already taken care of that for me." Samuel took a seat in the chair next to me. "Of course she has." I took a sip of steaming hot coffee and swallowed. "Sorry?" He hadn't quite heard my rude comment. "Nothing, I just said she's good, isn't she? I wonder how she's feeling this morning." I smiled. I think it had started to resonate with Samuel that Sarah and I didn't get on. He had been used to Sarah not getting along with anyone his entire life. We hadn't really spoken about the situation with Emily recently. Both of us were in agreement that we wanted to put it all behind us. A temporary blip in the timeline of the Richardson family history, but I was adamant I wanted nothing to do with her as far as business was concerned. "Esmeralda, I've been thinking." He stopped and looked serious at me. "Mm-hmm." I was slightly nervous about what was coming next. "The house is quite lonely when you're not here, and I hate it when you go back to your apartment. Why don't you just move in? I mean, there's more than enough room for both of us." He gave a slight chuckle, blowing the top of his mug. "What?" I wasn't sure if this was a good or a bad suggestion, and the correct response wasn't presenting itself quickly enough to me. "I mean, you don't have to make a decision now, but it makes sense, right?" He leant in and placed his warm hand on top of the blanket on my lap. Um, was all I could muster. "Oh, okay, maybe it is too soon." He sat back and stared into the distance, the early morning sun almost in full view. He seemed offended by my lack of enthusiasm. "But it does need, well, a woman's touch, if you know what I mean." Samuel wasn't the type of man to beg, nor was the one to chase a woman, but he was the type to want control and be in charge of a relationship. Moving in with him would relinquish most of my responsibilities. I understood that. It's not that I didn't know how to explain myself. I mean, I don't want to spoil things. I took a moment to compose myself. I don't want the family thinking. I mean, Sarah will. To hell with Sarah. It's got nothing to do with her. Let me worry about her meddling ways. He abruptly corrected me. Besides, she flies back to Florida today also. You won't have to see her again for a while. I shuffled in my seat. Well, this was awkward for sure, an early morning conversation. Well, the offer is there. Samuel placed his half-empty coffee cup firmly on the glass table in front of us and stood up. I need to get ready. The driver will be here in 40 minutes. Samuel swiftly made his way back upstairs, leaving me to consider his proposition. Well, he clearly liked me enough to live with him, but was it soon? Too soon? I chatted away to myself in my head. Half of me was being cautious, the other overthinking. Was I making it more of a deal than it actually was? Samuel caught his flight. I took my time in getting ready and made myself comfortable in his home office so I could give Cordelia a call back from the previous night. Ready with a pen and notebook, I started to dial her number. There was something about the first call to a client that had me hooked. What was it going to be about? Was it dangerous? Was it interesting enough for me to take the risk? I guess I was about to find out. Her number only rang out twice before she answered. Hello, Miss King? She cleared her throat. Good morning, Cordelia. How are you? I asked politely. To be honest, Miss King, I've been better. She was blunt. Please call me Esme. I quickly answered by return, wanting to get straight to the point, pen poised and ready to make notes. I'm calling because I'm hoping you'll be able to help me and get the answers I so longingly need, she added. Oh? I edged forwards in my seat tentatively, elbows on the desk, my toes twiddling nervously with the corner of the desk. The thing is, I think I've always known, but never really wanted to acknowledge it. Cordelia cleared her throat for what was about to come. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure I'm actually following you. What is it that you've always known? Well, I know I barely know you, but I feel as though I should all get this off my chest. It all started about a month ago. I felt him watching me, following me, as if he was studying my every move, but then his attention seemed to turn to my daughter. I listened quietly, not saying a word, just letting her relay her story to me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, him being in the same place at the same time, but then it kept happening daily. He was at the park by my daughter's school first thing in the morning, then again when she finished. Always on his own, never with anyone. He was at the same restaurants we ate in, at the same shopping centre, and even outside our house. That was the last straw. She seemed to pause, as if frightened. Go on, I prompted. It started to feel like he was the predator and we were the prey, playing with us until the point that he was ready to attack. He didn't seem to care that I had noticed him. In fact, every time I looked in his direction, he stared back. Cordelia, I feel as if we should start from the beginning. You keep saying he. Who is he? Who was watching you? I asked. His name was Andrew. Andrew Farraday. His name didn't ring a bell. So, what happened next? I was intrigued as to where this was heading and whether this was a case and one that I wanted to potentially take on. It sounded like a stalker situation, an investigation into someone with a weird fascination for another person. I had had enough. On the last day of term, I did the same school run as I always did. I saw him sitting at the same park bench as before. Making sure I saw my daughter inside the school gates and safe, I began walking over to him. I'd had a bad morning. A stomach bug had kept my husband up all night, followed by him almost missing his early morning flight to Zurich. Suffice to say that I was cranky and not wanting to take any nonsense from this stranger. Her voice trailed off as she struggled to find the energy to relay the events of the day. Did he try running away or avoiding you? I was expecting her to say yes. No, quite the opposite. He sunk into his seat, his arms on the back of the park bench, his eyes locked on mine as if he were expecting me to join him. She paused again. I swallowed in anticipation. So I kept walking, checking behind me periodically in case he was in fact looking at someone else, and I had got it wrong the whole time. But there wasn't anyone, just me. Cordelia, can you remember what he looked like? What was he wearing? Are you able to give a description should you be asked to in the future? I asked, presuming at this stage he had done something horrific. I can remember every little detail of his face. Short brown, thinning hair, slightly wavy at the front, dark brown eyes, a long nose, average sized lips that had a small upcurve, causing his smile to appear slightly curious. He had dark skin, Mediterranean possibly, a noticeable small mole just below his left eye, like a tear. He wore a white polo shirt, dark jeans, smart leather trainers, and an overcoat. He seemed. What did he seem, Cordelia? He seemed normal, friendly, in fact. Not what I would have expected a crazy person to look like. She appeared to nervously laugh, following her comment. Why was he crazy? What did he do next? I asked. I couldn't make sense of what he was talking about. It was as if he was trying to figure out the truth himself. She cleared her throat and continued. I asked if I knew him, or if we had met before and why he was following me, but he looked up at me and patted the seat beside him. He said if I had 5 minutes to spare, would I listen to something he had to say? I don't know why, but I did, Esmeralda. Okay. I pushed her to continue her story. I sat down. My eyes sank to a small pink ribboned bracelet that he kept fiddling with and running it round and round his fingers. If I'm being totally honest, I thought maybe he had lost someone close to him, like a daughter, and it was his way of coping, or perhaps my daughter reminded him of his. But then he began. I listened as Cordelia replayed the conversation between herself and Andrew Farraday. Mrs. Jones, he spoke. Cordelia, if I may. How do you know my name? He cut Cordelia short and continued. Do you ever get the feeling that something isn't right, but you can't put your finger on it? You think you know someone, but deep down it's all just a big lie, but you accept it anyway. That niggling feeling inside, but you don't want to trust your instincts, he said, looking at Cordelia from the side of his eye. I'm not sure I understand what. The second time he had cut Cordelia short mid-sentence. Cordelia could relate to Andrew on so many levels, and she had blanked her instincts for so many years, but she wasn't about to relate to a stranger or give him any ammunition to make him think that he was the same as her. She's a little miracle, isn't she? He pursed his lips together and nodded his head in the direction of Cordelia's daughter's school, swallowing so heavy that even she could hear it. Well, yes, she is actually. We struggled for years. Wait, I'm confused. How do you know my name and how do you know that my daughter is? You're scaring me. I'm going to call the police. Cordelia wrestled with her pocket to try to retrieve her phone. I'm not your enemy, Cordelia. I mean you and your daughter no harm. I just needed to see it for myself. He blinked several times as though he was struggling with words. I mean to go through so much to have your own daughter to then. She has your eyes, you know. Andrew looked into Cordelia's eyes like he was trying to reach her soul, to find answers to something he was battling internally. Of course she has my eyes. She's my daughter. Cordelia was losing patience. Do you ever question or wonder? He paused and looked away. He seemed to be going through his own traumatic journey, wrestling with his in demons. What? Question what? Cordelia moved forwards onto the seat to try to bring her attention back to her. There's so much more that I need to. He stopped himself. Have you thought maybe. Maybe what? She said. What are you trying to tell me? Are you okay? Do you need help with something? Is there someone I can call? Cordelia felt sorry for him, but she didn't know why or what his intentions were. Just as she thought he was going to continue, a large, long-haired dog came bounding over to the two of them, a mouth full of slobber and a large stick. His tail wagged as he jumped between the two of them, hoping they would play. Cordelia and Andrew jumped, being interrupted at a crucial moment. They sat awkwardly, waiting for the owner to rescue their companion so they could resume. Bruce, Bruce! Oh, I do apologise. He's the most unobedient dog at times. I'm so very sorry. The owner clipped him back on the lead, pulling at his collar and leading him away. There was silence. Cordelia was so desperately wanting to understand what this stranger had to say and how she was involved in some way. Andrew sat fiddling with the pink bracelet on his wrist more erratically than he had previously done so. Their conversation paused mid-flow by the dog. You were saying? She pushed him again. Um. He suddenly shot back to reality. Now is not the right time. He stood up abruptly, as if uncomfortable and agitated. I need to. I'm sorry. I must go. I'm sorry. He paced back and forth like a disturbed madman, shaking his head. But wait, you can't. Cordelia tried to follow. I need to understand. Andrew instantly turned around. Now is not the right time. I told you, you must wait. I'll be in contact. I need more information. His face serious, his eyes black and angry, and not one who wanted to be reasoned with. Cordelia froze in fear as he walked into the distance, so many questions wandering in her mind. What about her daughter? What should she question? How did he know her name? He continued walking, no pause, no looking back until he disappeared out of sight, leaving behind nothing other than the strangest conversation she had ever had in her life. Cordelia stared into the horizon, the park around her eerily quiet, her body still, but her thoughts in overdrive. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. Cordelia, I mean you and your daughter no harm. Until we meet again. Andrew Farraday. Her heart raced. How had he got her number? Cordelia finished relaying the events of the day back to me. So you called him back, right? I asked. No, I didn't. I was scared to find out what he wanted to tell me. I kicked myself every day. I couldn't stop thinking about it, about him, about what he had said to me. But there was something niggling away at me in the back of my mind, telling me not to, just to stay well away from him. Finally, a week after deliberation, I finally did. I called the number that had texted me that very same day. And I pushed her to continue. His wife answered instead. She was distraught. I could hear the pain in her voice. She said Andrew had passed away. At first, she didn't say how. Cordelia cleared her throat again. She was traumatized. The thing is, Esmeralda, his wife presumed he was having an affair with me. She was adamant he was going to work until I told her that he'd been following me and where I was. I explained the strange conversation in the park and that he was trying to tell me something. She sighed as if it was her fault. Did she say anything else? I questioned. She said he'd seemed obsessed with something ever since a relative passed away, or he had a secret and was hiding something from her. I wasn't really listening at one point. It was all so much to take in. I mean, why would a stranger, someone I'd never met before, be obsessed with my daughter unless he had sick intentions? Her voice turned to one of rage, and more importantly, why, what did he have to say to me, but couldn't? If only I had. My notebook had turned into a mismatch of words, arrows, scribbles, and writing that was completely illegible. I was still very much old school and preferred to jot down notes quickly, then add them to a file at a later stage. What's more peculiar is that she said another woman had called her as well, and he was equally as fascinated with her daughter. Andrew Farraday had a similar conversation with her and had left his name and number, so it wasn't just my daughter. Did she say who this other woman was? I asked. No, Cordelia popped. I sat back in my armchair thinking for a moment about everything Cordelia had told me and whether this was something I wanted to take on. Esmeralda, Esme, are you still there? Cordelia asked. Yeah, sorry, just trying to process everything. I stalled. Do you know how he died? Cordelia asked me the rhetorical question. No, I replied. In broad daylight, during the middle of the day, and in full view of all of the public, he jumped from the roof of a building in London. Don't you think it's strange that a man so fascinated with two other little girls had his own 4-year-old daughter? He shows strange and erratic behaviour, clearly something on his mind, and then does this? Cordelia paused. Now, I may be jumping to conclusions here, but to me, he either had a guilty conscience or he knew something we didn't. Why else would he jump? It could have been mental health or any number of factors, money, debt, relationship breakdowns. I have connections to the police, and they are alerted to a high number of suicides, not just in London, but countrywide. So I don't want to speculate, but I do agree that his erratic behaviour beforehand was very strange. I agreed, nodding to myself. The police want nothing more to do with this, as the death wasn't suspicious. I have money, Esmeralda, and I understand you can help us get to the bottom of this without the help of the police. I need to know what this man was trying to tell us. What if he was trying to warn us about something or someone? What if my daughter is in danger? I need to know. She sounded desperate. Listen, I need to gather some information first. I still have so many questions. I needed to bring a sense of composure to this conversation. But you can help us, right? Cordelia asked. I was under the impression to give an answer. Should I take it on without speaking to Samuel first? Name your price, Esmeralda. I will pay you whatever you want. It's not about the money, Cordelia. It's my ability to get the answers you're looking for. I love a challenge, but are you prepared for what may or may not uncovered? I asked. Cordelia needed to be ready for the potential of what may be about to follow. Oh, I am more than prepared, Esme, she replied. I do have a quick question, Cordelia, before I commit to accepting this case. I drew a line under my previous notes. You said right at the beginning that you'd always known, but never answered when I asked you. For this case to work, you need to be able to tell me anything and everything. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I haven't told anyone at this, Esmeralda. We tried for years and years to conceive. We even tried multiple IVF clinics. It was our final hope. She was our little miracle. I noticed something change in Cordelia's tone. We finally chose the Fincham IVF clinic, and our prayers were answered. But I can't put my finger on it. There has always been something so different about our little girl. We had a plethora of problems, lost lab results, missing paperwork, cancelled appointments. But we disregarded so much of it because the process hadn't worked for the first time, and that was all that mattered. But what if... What are you saying, Cordelia? I'm saying, what if... The signal crackled as if she was moving around. Cordelia, I can't quite hear you. Can you repeat yourself? I listened tentatively. And Esmeralda? Yes, I replied. Can we keep this confidential, please? I should have told my husband when all this started, but I had my own concerns. Her voice was the quietest it had been all conversation, like she was whispering to keep from being overheard. Confidential? Yeah, sure, but you said something about what if, and then you cut out. Can you repeat it, please? I squinted, trying desperately to hear her reply. Okay, great. Let me know what else you need. Thanks again, Esmeralda. You have no idea how much this means to me. She hung up. I removed the phone from my ear and looked at the screen. It was blank. She hadn't hung up. My phone had run out of battery. That was strange. It had been on charge all night long. I quietly ran to the other room to replace it on charge, but by the time I had enough battery, Cordelia kept going to answer phone. I guess this was my cue to start the investigation. But what had she been trying to tell me?